Today I'm here with Anthony Goodwin, the candidate for the Reform Party for Chelsea and Fulham area. Anthony is an international entrepreneur that has businesses all over the world and he employs more than 1,000 people. So I guess my question to you is, you grew up in a council estate and you went to state school. So what made you get into politics in the first place?
Shouting at the TV.
Yeah.
My kids said to me, "Dad, why do you watch the news if it irritates you so much?"
Yeah.
And seeing the mainstream media's false narratives and misrepresentations on what I know is going on in the world,
Yeah.
especially with my knowledge of Europe and other parts of the world that I do business in, and this complete miscommunication has irritated me to the point where, alongside the mismanagement of this great country by the governments, successive governments over the last 30 years, I thought, I've got to do something.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how I feel, to be honest with you. So what do you think about the mainstream media? Why do you think the mainstream media always tries to make the Reform Party look like a far-right party or a racist party? What do you think their agenda is?
I really don't know, actually. I think it's a collective trauma in this world over what happened in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And that the 30-something generation now feel that they've got to make sure that fascism doesn't rise again.
Yeah.
And that's got nothing to do with the centrist kind of policies that Reform have got. I mean, let's take the EU elections recently on Sunday. So, another instance where I started getting irate with the BBC News because they said on Sunday night and then on Monday, repeat again on Monday morning, the far right have risen in Europe.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not the far, it's just ordinary people voting against the WEF, the WHO, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Davos, Gert Wörthersted, Guy Wörthersted, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
All these unelected bodies telling us what to do and what to think.
Exactly, and basically common sense have now become a far-right thing. If you want to control on immigration, if you all the things you just mentioned, if you just want common sense policy, they will call you far-right. And I think another trauma is that the younger generation don't have the same opportunities that they used to. So you grew up in the 1980s, and as I said, you came from a council estate. Why do you think the youth now don't have the same opportunities that they did 30 years ago?
It's a feeling I get for a number of reasons, but first of all, let me say, Eunice, that it's backed up by recent studies in the last 5 to 8 years that have proven that social mobility in the UK is harder than it was in the 70s and 80s when I was at school and growing up. And so that's a fact.
Yeah.
But for me, the main reasons are bureaucracy and red tape. And by that I mean, particularly from the EU, the kind of nanny state of, we'll look after you. We know what's best for you, so we will look after you. And don't worry, we'll take care of it. And what that's generated is a reliance on government, on big government. You know, I'm a libertarian. I think less government is good, not more government. And you know, even the tech companies use this as a way of controlling the information and data that they harvest from you. It's convenience, it's safety, we're looking after you. We know what's best for you. And I think what people are waking up to is they don't want to be told what's best for them. They want to look after themselves. And I think what Reform stands for is exactly those sets of values, where people actually do look after themselves. Obviously, there are going to be times when that we need the government, of course we do. But I do think now that people are finally coming around to the view that Reform is good for the UK.
So you have 8 children?
That's right.
And you're married to a Muslim woman?
That's right.
And I come from a minority background myself, so I come from a Muslim background myself, even though I'm not a Muslim anymore. What do you say to those people that always say Reform Party is a far-right, racist party, and how do you encourage maybe people from my kind of background, especially in the Chelsea and Fulham constituency, because there's a lot of us here. What would you say to those people that are maybe not so willing to vote for a reform party because of this wrong image that they have in their head?
Well, first of all, I'd say please don't just take your messages and information from mainstream media,
Yeah.
because there's no doubt about the liberal left-wing bias within the mainstream media. That said, I will say I've got a lot of very good left-wing friends who are advising me on this campaign and who are reformers. So, you know, the whole left-right thing is completely non-relevant to this election.
Yeah.
But coming back to your point, you know, first of all, my children are very proud of their Pakistani heritage, and so am I.
Yeah.
I welcome Islam and Islamic people into reform. And I know from my own experience that they are relatively conservative with a small c, as people. And that's what reform is, the party of sensible politics. It's common sense politics that you mentioned before, and we have been portrayed in this way through one or two silly or uncontrolled utterances from some. We've got millions of members now.
Yeah.
Of course, just like the Labour Party have got Marxists, and the Liberal Party have got people who don't really know what they're doing. You know, we're going to have some silly comments from time to time, and just don't let the mainstream media pick on that, exploit it, and then say this is what Richard Tice, Ben Habib, who's half Pakistani, Dr. David Bull, and Nigel Farage stand for, because they don't. And by the way, I said them in that order because Richard Tice has done a fantastic job over the last 4 years with reform, as has Dr. David Bull, and great to have Ben with us too, and it's great to have Nigel back. But this is a political movement. It's not about one person, it's not about one issue, it's about people, you and I, as people, taking back control of our own destiny, and not being led by this ridiculous narrative in the mainstream media. You know, thank goodness for social media, because we would probably be suppressed by now.
Exactly.
We would probably get no exposure at all, other than if some, you know, care in the community or someone with a mental illness, and I'm not deriding mental illness, you know, it's very prevalent, but somebody who is not quite in control of their faculties says something ridiculous because they're wearing a reform rosette. I will not allow that to continue. That's just wrong.
Exactly, and I think what's happened is that now we have the authoritarian left and the libertarian right. So the parties has almost switched in a way, because the left are the ones that want more control and they advocate for things like cancel culture and restricting freedom of speech. And they are the ones that have this globalist agenda and they want to control everything. And I feel like the right has now become almost the libertarian right, where before it was the authoritarian right and the libertarian left. Because as you said, I'm an old school liberal. I believe in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. But you don't see that anymore in the left anymore. They try to pander to these policies that are just nonsensical. And as I said, reform party is not about right or left, it's about common sense. And we have this all over the world. It's not just in the UK, we have it with Trump, maybe in America and all over Europe. So I guess my follow-up question to that is, this borough, Chelsea and Fulham, has been won by Labour and Conservatives for the last 30 years, and usually more Conservative than Labour. Why do you think reform should win at this time?
Well, to me, it's quite clear. You know, Greg Hands, he's a nice guy, you know, and that's it. He's a nice guy. And we have a number of problems here in Fulham, not least Fulham and Chelsea, and the whole of London actually, not least crime. So let me give my experience in the last couple of years. My son's been mugged. My car's been broken into twice in 12 months. Once it was outside Lady Margaret School, where my daughter was doing a dance show, and it was broad daylight. My wife has had her phone stolen, and I just keep hearing these stories every week of somebody having their car stolen, being broken into, being intimidated. And Greg Hands has not challenged Sadiq Khan's narrative that London is safer. London is not safer. They may have reclassified what a crime is. They may have redone the statistics. London is not safer, and we need to make it safer. And the fact that Greg hasn't challenged that is wrong. And as I say, nice people don't challenge things. And we need the strength and fortitude of the people that we've got in the Reform Party to challenge things. I always say in business, those people who are successful in business, and it's the same in politics, you've got to be able to have difficult conversations with people in order to change things. The whole of Reform is about changing things for the better. And Chelsea and Fulham need that. They need it on a macroeconomic level, from the leadership point of view. So again, Ben Habib, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Dr. David Bull, and all of us helping them make difficult decisions to improve things. It's not left or right to want to improve the NHS. It's not left or right to want to get rid of bureaucracy. It's not left or right to want to get rid of the control of the EU and return us back to a sovereign state. And as Ben said on the radio yesterday, Ben Habib, there seems to be this division from 2016 onwards, and I kind of liken it to almost a civil war without fighting. It almost goes back to the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. You either believe in something or you don't. And one side is not going to agree with the other side. And what we want to try and do with reform is to get rid of this nonsense right or far right label. In order to have debate, as Baroness Fox is a great champion of debate and free speech, you've got to get rid of labels. And I will not accept the label
identity politics.
I will not accept a far right label. I just won't. Because I know that Reform has a lot of previous Labour voters supporting us, advising us, helping us.
Exactly.
So it's not about left and right, and we've got to shelve this far right label. It's horrible.
So I lived in Kensington and Chelsea for 2 decades, and you've lived in Fulham for 3 decades. And other than the issue of crime, what do you think this borough, Chelsea and Fulham need, other than a reduction in crime? But what do you think? What are your sort of manifestos for the borough? What do you think we can improve on? Is it infrastructure? What would you be spending your time on?
Well, first of all, another thing that Greg Hands has caved into is this LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, and ULEZ. This has decimated smaller businesses, and it's taken the life out of the high streets. And people can't get around, and people are afraid to go down certain roads because they'll get a fine. And let's face it, it's a money-making scheme. Greg Hands didn't challenge that enough. It's happened, and it's not helped the infrastructure of this borough. I mean, we have 2 fantastic hospitals here which need more investment. I mean, all 8 of my children were born in the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, and a fantastic service. I have to say, the frontline workers on the NHS are very good, but they're poorly represented by their middle and senior management. So we would look at that. We would look at reforming the NHS. I don't have all the policies here, but we do have 6 or 7 solid ways of making that happen. And so what else would we do? Public sector, public services. We seem to be spending more and more money on civil servants and public sector workers and getting less from it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of well-educated, hard-working, good people in both of those public sector services, NHS and public sector services. But why, under this Tory government, have we gone up by 150,000 civil servants and public sector workers, and yet we feel we're getting a worse service? Mismanagement again. The other thing is that as an entrepreneur, as a businessman all my life, and by the way, that is my first love. Politics isn't. I came into politics because of the frustrations that I've told you about earlier. But the fact that we're wasting so much of these people's talents on public sector. I think 55% of our GDP now goes into public sector, and you know, that should be in the private sector. What pays for the public sector? The private sector. If you had half of those, 75,000 people starting their own businesses, being part of small businesses, small and medium-sized enterprise are the lifeblood of this country. We've been entrepreneurs for hundreds of years, and I want to keep that going. I want to encourage that. And as an entrepreneur myself, which I enjoy doing, that's what I would. That's how this whole mentality, I changed this whole sense of reliance on government, big government. Let's get rid of that and go back to where we were in the 80s as an entrepreneurial country.
So you're going to encourage businesses and lower taxes on businesses?
One of our great policies is, first of all, to increase the tax threshold from 12,500 to 20,000,
which is a great idea.
It's a fantastic idea, and don't forget, it's been fully costed. Before everyone says, where are you going to get the money from? It's been fully costed and fully worked out, and that means nurses and other lower paid staff immediately get anything between a 6 and 9% salary increase under reform, which is a great policy. And we've got to reduce corporation tax to 20% as soon as feasibly possible. You see, the other thing on SMEs, you know, most businesses only make between 10 and 15% profit. So if your corporation tax is at 30%, you're destroying a lot of their profit. If you reduce that down to 20%, you probably give them 5% profit back in order for them to employ other people and expand their business. Reform stands for low tax, high growth. That's the key to the reform. And it's something else that attracted me to being part of reform.
Exactly. I feel like London is not the same city it used to be, especially 10 or 20 years ago. I feel like it's not as vibrant and dynamic it used to be. And that has happened maybe since 2016 or 2020, and I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe it's because so many businesses have left the UK.
Well, I'll tell you another reason is because now everyone's working from home. You know, and we've said that's the new norm. And that's just not not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the DVLA and other public sector bodies saying we're going to strike if we're asked to come in 3 days a week.
Although I would say some jobs is more efficient to do it from home.
No. Listen, it's also there has been some good effects. So, for example, people
less pollution.
Less pollution, but also people who are immobile. You know, and working mothers and people who can't commute. I get that, but that's a small percentage of the overall working population. And certainly when it comes to my businesses, our policy now is 5 days in the office. Yes, there's flexibility. Of course, there's flexibility. There should always be. But overall, you've got to make sure that people are working. And the vibrancy of London, you're absolutely right, it's not vibrant because there's not enough people coming into work.
Also, maybe one of the reasons is that businesses are not thriving, because I also remember going down King's Road and Mayfair, especially on a Friday or Saturday night, it was booming. Like, it was so many people in the street, they couldn't walk, and all the restaurants were full, and because people had money to spend, but also it was just this vibrant feel to it. Whereas now, sometimes I go out on a Saturday night and it feels like a ghost town. I was like, where is everyone? This is not what you like. And sometimes I remember, like, it was so busy, like in 2015, I used to go out on a night out, and I used to go to the tube, and it was so busy on the tube, and we used to have half the party on the tube before we get out. We go there, no one's there.
Well, did you know over 3,000 nightclubs and bars are closed under Sadiq Khan? I mean, unfortunately, you know, they just don't have anywhere to go.
Exactly.
And this, I just heard some news recently. Matthew Clark, a big drinks distributor, has gone, has shrunk its operations because of that. And my nephew has lost his job.
It definitely feels like London is not a hub that it used to be. I feel like everyone's going to Dubai or Florida or Miami, and we really need to bring that vibrancy back to London. So without any further ado, is there any other last words you would like to say to your constituency of Chelsea and Fulham?
Yes, I would. you know, we've talked about a lot about problems, but the great thing about Great Britain is we are resourceful.
Yeah.
And we are, and the great thing about reform is it is a party of hope, aspiration, and ambition.
Yeah.
And that's what I will bring to Chelsea and Fulham. That's what I will bring to London, and that's what reform will bring to United Kingdom. Hope, aspiration, ambition.
Okay, Mr. Anthony Goodwin, I will definitely vote for you because I'm one of your residents. Good luck in the election.
Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers. Thank you.